You step through the door after the commute, the keys still warm from your pocket, and the apartment settles around you in that familiar quiet. The workday lingers in your shoulders, not dramatic, just the steady press of meetings that ran long, emails that multiplied, and the low hum of decisions you made for other people. You set your bag down, glance toward the kitchen where the same few groceries from the weekend sit on the counter, some already past their first freshness. Without a conscious plan, your thumb finds the phone. The delivery app opens to its usual grid of glowing photographs, restaurants you have seen dozens of times before. You scroll past the suggestions that already know your tastes, pick something that looks filling enough, and confirm with the tap that barely requires thought. 28 minutes, the screen promises. You drop onto the couch, shoes still on, and let the wait begin. It used to feel occasional, perhaps once or twice when the fridge looked empty or the evening carried extra weight from the office. The first orders carried a small sense of treat, something that broke the rhythm without much consequence. Now the pattern has settled in quietly, 4 nights out of 7 following the same sequence. The app greets you by name, suggests the usual without prompting, and the driver message arrives like clockwork. The bag appears at the door, still warm, and the evening moves forward with one fewer task to negotiate. No inventory check, no chopping board, no sink full of pans afterward. Just the food, the container, and the quiet afterward. Later, the receipt arrives in your inbox while you eat straight from the box. The base meal sits at $29, delivery adds $5, the service fee another $6, taxes push it higher, and the tip you accepted at the default level brings the total to $48 for one person. You finish the portion without pausing much over the details, but the figure lingers. 4 nights like this in an ordinary week adds up to something near $800 a month. The weekend groceries, the ones meant to cover the rest of the days, ran about $140, yet several containers from that shop still sit unopened in the crisper because the midweek evenings tilted toward the easier option again. You had carried the assumption that the numbers balanced out in some loose way. The paycheck lands on schedule, rent clears, utilities get paid, and the month feels manageable on the surface. A single order registers as nothing more than dinner, a small exchange for time and mental space. It never stood out as a choice that needed scrutiny. The convenience wrapped itself around the fatigue of the day so neatly that questioning it felt like adding unnecessary friction to an already full schedule. There is a particular kind of relief embedded in the habit. After hours of aligning with other people's deadlines and expectations, those 30 seconds of scrolling and tapping feel like a brief pocket of control. The food arrives without discussion or compromise. You don't have to stand at the counter weighing what ingredients remain or decide whether the energy left in you matches the effort of cooking something decent. The evening simply continues, lighter in one dimension, even as the containers pile up in the recycling bin by the end of the week. The app has smoothed the transition without drawing attention to it. It remembers the address, the preferred payment, the small customizations you made months ago. It removes the small obstacles so thoroughly that the alternative, pulling out a pan, washing produce, timing the meal, begins to feel like an imposition rather than the baseline. What started as an occasional bypass of the ordinary kitchen routine has gradually become the routine. You reach for it the way someone might reach for the thermostat when the room feels off, a small adjustment that keeps the immediate discomfort at bay. You notice how the same stretch of evening plays out differently for others whose finances seem to move with more breathing room. They might pull leftovers from a larger batch prepared on a calmer Sunday, or they walk to the small market a few blocks away when the craving hits, treating delivery as something reserved for genuine disruptions, pouring rain, sudden guests, or the rare night when every plan collapses. To them, the tired weekday does not automatically translate into another order. They see the same hours ahead and move through them with a different set of defaults, the extra cost of convenience still visible rather than absorbed into the background of an ordinary week. The containers stack up over time, the app notifications blend into the rest of the phone's quiet demands, and the pattern continues without announcement. Some weeks it dips to 3 orders when the weekend cooking carried over more than expected. Other weeks it climbs because a deadline stretched late or the weather turned unpleasant. The total shifts but rarely drops below a certain floor. The convenience that once felt like a minor luxury has slowly taken on the texture of something the week now expects, something the days organize themselves around without discussion. It did not announce its arrival, it simply became the way the evenings tended to resolve, one effortless confirmation at a time. You sit with the empty container beside you on the table, the apartment lights low, the television murmuring something forgettable in the background. The numbers sit there in plain view now, not alarming but insistent in their quiet addition. The salary covers it, the budget on paper still holds, yet the accumulation keeps the sense of forward movement from landing quite where it seemed headed. The lifestyle assumption that steady earnings and regular paychecks would naturally create space meets the reality of these small, repeated choices that add up without drama. The evening feels no heavier than yesterday. The food satisfied the immediate need, but the quiet ledger underneath no longer quite aligns with the story of gradual progress you had been carrying. You notice how the psychological ease of the tap protects the moment from closer inspection. The fatigue of the day makes any extra step feel disproportionate. Cooking would require planning, cleanup, and a certain willingness to engage with the kitchen when the mind wants only to disengage. Delivery removes all of that negotiation. It offers predictability in an unpredictable stretch of hours. The portion arrives exactly as pictured, the weight is tracked in real time, and the transaction completes with no human interaction beyond the brief handoff at the door. That reliability becomes its own comfort, a small buffer against the low-level exhaustion that many evenings carry after years of the same professional rhythm. Over months, the shift hardens further. The groceries bought with good intention on Saturday start to feel like backup supplies rather than the main plan. Some items get used, others slide past their dates and end up discarded, another small subtraction layered onto the larger one. The total monthly outlay for these orders hovers near the cost of a modest car payment or a noticeable chunk of rent in many cities. Yet because it arrives in increments of $40 or $50 rather than one lump sum, it slips past the mental accounting that catches bigger expenses. The mind registers each night separately, never quite adding the full column at once. People whose financial picture feels more stable treat the same tired evening with a lighter touch. They might default to simpler meals assembled from staples kept in steady supply, or they accept the small effort of reheating something prepared earlier because the long-term math remains visible to them. Convenience still exists in their lives, but it hasn't become the default setting for ordinary weekdays. The cost registers more clearly, perhaps because their other numbers allow them to see the trade-off without strain. The realization settles without urgency as you clear the last of the container. The convenience that began as a harmless workaround has gradually assumed the shape of an unstated obligation, something the rhythm of work and recovery now leans on without announcement. It did not require a dramatic decision or a conscious surrender. It arrived through repetition, through the removal of small frictions, until the alternative started to feel like unnecessary labor. The evenings continue much as they did before. The food fills the gap, the paycheck absorbs the total, yet the slow hardening of the habit keeps the sense of real accumulation from matching the surface steadiness. If observations like this stay with you, the others are there on the channel.